is so much fun. Here comes Andy Pandy in Andy Pandy Land.
It was a hot day. The sun was shining brightly, and not a cloud was to be seen in the sky. Looby Loo thought it would be nice to have something cool to drink, so she, Andy Pandy and Teddy were going to make lemonade. On the table were a jug, some sugar, a lemon squeezer, and 4 big yellow lemons. Teddy thought it might be fun to do some juggling with the lemons. Looby Loo didn't. She didn't want anything in her cosy little house getting broken. Teddy wanted to cut the lemons in half. Looby Loo told him that the knife was quite sharp, and if it slipped he might hurt himself. So she asked Andy Pandy to cut them instead. Next, Looby Loo had to melt some sugar in water to sweeten the lemonade. She poured the sugar into her saucepan. Then she added a little water. Teddy wanted to help. Looby Loo told Teddy that the pan was getting very hot and he might burn himself. Teddy was beginning to wonder what he was going to be able to do to help make the lemonade. Andy Pandy asked Teddy if he'd like to squeeze the lemons. At last, Teddy was going to do something. He squeezed and squeezed the lemons. Soon he'd squeezed all 4 lemons, and he poured their juice into the jug. By that time, Looby Loo had melted the sugar in the water. She poured that into the jug too. The lemonade felt quite hot. Teddy thought lemonade was supposed to be cool and refreshing, but Looby Loo said they hadn't quite finished yet. She gave the lemonade a good stir. Andy Pandy added some ice. The lemonade was good and cold now. It was ready to drink. Looby Loo even had some straws to drink it with. It tasted delicious. When Teddy had finished his lemonade, he made a lot of noise with his straws. Looby Loo said she thought he was being a bit rude. She asked him to stop, so he did. But Teddy was feeling mischievous. He used his straw to blow in Looby Loo's ear. Looby Loo wasn't pleased. She didn't like having tricks played on her. Then Andy Pandy said he knew of something else you could do with straws, something a bit more useful and a bit less likely to get a Teddy into trouble. Back at Andy Pandy's house, Andy Pandy was looking in his cupboard. He found some sheets of paper and some pots of paint. Andy Pandy asked Teddy which colour he'd like to use first. Teddy thought Andy Pandy had forgotten something. Where were the paintbrushes? Andy Pandy said they didn't need paintbrushes, they were going to use straws. Straws? A straw wouldn't make a very good paintbrush at all. But Teddy was wrong. And as Andy Pandy blew on the paint, Teddy saw that it made lovely red shapes on the paper. Now he wanted a turn. Teddy blew the paint with a straw, and soon he'd made some lovely patterns too. Andy Pandy and Teddy blew and blew, and then they blew some more. They'd soon covered the paper with long, wiggly lines of paint. Teddy had quite a bit on him too. They'd made a lovely painting, and Andy Pandy said they could do another one. Later that day, Andy Pandy invited everyone to his house to see the paintings he and Teddy had done. Everyone thought they were brilliant, and Looby Loo had made some more lemonade. They thought that was brilliant too. Everyone enjoyed the lemonade, and Looby Loo didn't even mind when Teddy made rude noises in his glass again. It had been a very hot night, and the heat had kept Andy Pandy awake. Teddy hadn't slept well either. Andy was telling Bilbo how hard it was to sleep during a hot night, and Bilbo said that Andy and Teddy should make a tent so they could sleep in the fresh air. All they'd need was an old sheet and a clothesline. Andy thought that Looby-Loo might have some old sheets. Looby soon found an old sheet for Andy and Teddy. Then Looby found a clothesline, and she lent that to Andy and Teddy as well. Looby sent Andy and Teddy off to Bilbo so he could teach them how to make their tent. Bilbo told Andy and Teddy to tie one end of Looby's clothesline to the tree and the other end to the top of the slide. Andy and Teddy hung the sheet over the clothesline. Andy put pebbles on the side of the sheet to hold the tent in place. And then the tent was ready. Soon it would be time to try it out. That night, Teddy lit the way as Looby helped Andy Pandy carry everything that they would need for a night in their new tent. Teddy fell asleep and dropped his torch, and it suddenly got very dark. But the moon came out, and again they could see what they were doing. Looby and Bilbo said good night to Andy and Teddy. Andy and Teddy were eating biscuits for their supper. Teddy wanted one last biscuit, but fell asleep before he could eat it. So Andy finished Teddy's biscuit, and then he also fell asleep. Tiffo had been for a long walk, and he hadn't seen the tent that Andy Pandy and Teddy had made. He wondered what this strange new white thing could be, and barked to make it go away. When Andy Pandy told Tiffo what the tent was for, he decided to leave it where it was. Andy and Teddy were soon asleep again, but the wind had started to blow, and the night got much colder. The wind blew harder and harder. As the tent blew away, Andy and Teddy thought that it didn't feel like a cozy tent anymore, and they wanted to go home to their own beds. Andy and Teddy thought they'd seen a horrid white giant, and they ran home as fast as they could. They didn't even stop to pick up their blankets. Next day was dull and chilly. Looby-Loo thought Andy and Teddy would like a warm, sweet drink after their night in the tent. But where had the tent gone? And where were Andy and Teddy? And what was that strange noise? It was Missy Hissy. Looby soon saw that her old sheet had trapped Missy Hissy inside her house. Andy and Teddy must have gone home, but Looby was sure they'd come and help Missy Hissy. As soon as she could see out of her window, Missy Hissy thanked her friends for rescuing her. After being trapped by a tent, there was nothing Missy Hissy would like more than a mug of Looby's warm, sweet drink. Looby-Loo was right. After such a strange night, everyone wanted a mug of her warm, sweet drink. The drink made Teddy feel so cozy. He was soon very sleepy again and fell asleep.
Andy Pandy. Here comes Andy Pandy and Looby-Loo, happy as he can be, Teddy too, playing in the garden every
Early one morning, Teddy was up and about and off to visit his best friend, Andy Pandy. It was early in the morning, and Andy Pandy hadn't finished his breakfast. He was having a boiled egg. He asked Teddy if he'd like one too. Teddy said he'd already had his breakfast, wasn't very fond of eggs. Andy Pandy said he bet he knew one sort of egg that Teddy liked. Chocolate eggs. Chocolate eggs were Teddy's favourite. Where were they, he wondered? Andy Pandy said he hadn't got any. But maybe they could make some. Andy Pandy looked in his special cupboard and found some bars of chocolate and some egg-shaped moulds. He said they'd go to Looby Loo's house and make the chocolate eggs there. Looby Loo was happy to lend Andy Pandy and Teddy a saucepan and let them use her little cooker. They broke the chocolate into pieces and put them into the saucepan. Then Andy Pandy began to melt the chocolate. Teddy wanted a go at stirring the chocolate mixture, but Looby Loo said that it was getting very hot. Teddy might burn himself. Soon the chocolate was melted. Very carefully, Andy Pandy poured the chocolate into the moulds. Teddy said he wanted the first egg. Wait, Teddy, the chocolate has to cool down and go hard before there are any chocolate eggs. So Teddy waited and waited and waited. When Teddy woke up, the chocolate moulds had gone. Where were they? And what about the chocolate eggs? Andy Pandy had taken the moulds home. And as for the eggs, said Looby Loo, she and Andy Pandy had wrapped them up in coloured foil and hidden them about the garden. They thought Teddy would like to have an egg hunt. Teddy thought that sounded like a brilliant idea. Andy Pandy told Teddy not to eat all the eggs at once. He'd get tummy ache. Teddy was off and looking for chocolate eggs as quick as you like. Tiffo had found one of the eggs Andy Pandy and Looby Loo had hidden, only he didn't know what it was. He thought it was a game. Teddy said it wasn't a game, it was a chocolate egg. Teddy ate it all up. Poor Tiffo didn't get any, and naughty Teddy didn't even pick up the wrapper. Teddy scampered off to find more chocolate eggs. Meanwhile, Bilbo had found something at the front of his boat. He wondered what it was. He quickly found out when Teddy arrived. Bilbo thought the chocolate egg looked rather tasty, but soon it had all gone, except for the wrapper, naughty Teddy. Orby had discovered a round purple thing near his house. He thought it might be one of his relatives come to pay him a visit, but it wasn't saying much. Teddy said that was because it was a chocolate egg. Chocolate eggs never said very much, but they did taste yummy once you got rid of the wrapper. There was a blue thing sitting on Missy Hissy's pipes. It was a chocolate egg. Missy Hissy thought she might have liked a piece of chocolate egg. She didn't want the wrapper, though. At last, Teddy returned to Looby Loo's house. Andy Pandy asked if Teddy had found all the eggs. So, where were they? Asked Looby Loo. Teddy had eaten them all, and now he wasn't feeling very well. Then the others arrived. They had brought with them the wrappers that Teddy had thrown away. They told Teddy what a bad bear he was to leave sweet wrappers all over the place. Looby Loo was very cross when she heard Teddy had been dropping litter. Teddy felt worse than ever. The others asked whether there were any more chocolate eggs. Andy Pandy had to tell them that there weren't. But he could soon make some more. Enough for everyone. For everyone except me, said Teddy. He wasn't going to want any chocolate for quite a while.
Andy Pandy. Here comes Andy Pandy and Looby Loo. Happy as he can be, Teddy too. Playing in the garden
It was a hot day. The sun was shining brightly, and not a cloud was to be seen in the sky. Andy Pandy hadn't come out to play all day long, and Looby-Loo and Teddy both wondered what had happened to him. They agreed to knock very gently on Andy's door to see if he was in. Looby wanted to know who had sneezed. Andy Pandy had caught a nasty cold. Looby thought Andy should have a warm drink and promised to bring him some hot lemon juice from her own house. Looby told Teddy about Andy's cold and said they should make a scarf to keep him warm. Teddy said he'd like to make the scarf. Soon he was hard at work making Andy's scarf. Looby-Loo had lent him some knitting needles and a ball of wool. But Teddy had never used knitting needles before and was finding it very difficult indeed. Tiffo was looking for someone to play with, then suddenly spotted the ball of wool. The ball of wool was the best toy Tiffo had ever played with. Bilbo had heard Andy's sneezes and wanted to visit him, but he couldn't get past all the wool. Missy Hissy was going to visit Andy too, and she could slither through the wool. Bilbo stayed behind and tidied up the green. Andy was feeling a bit better after his sleep. Teddy was proud of the very first woolen scarf he'd ever made, but he didn't want to catch Andy's cold, so he was pleased when Looby asked him to fetch some honey for Andy's warm drink. Even though Teddy had tried hard, the scarf really wasn't very good. But Missy Hissy said she'd keep Andy warm. Now that Teddy had brought the jar of honey, Looby-Loo could make Andy's warm drink, and Missy Hissy promised to make sure he drank it. Next morning, Looby-Loo and Teddy went to see if Andy Pandy was feeling better. And they were pleased to see he was feeling much better. He hadn't sneezed all night, and Missy Hissy had already gone home. In fact, Andy was ready to come out to play. Andy felt so much better, he wanted to have a swing. Oh, poor Missy Hissy had caught Andy Pandy's cold. Andy knew how to make her feel better. Andy gave Missy Hissy some of his warm lemon and honey drink. Bilbo had spent all night knitting a scarf. He had made it for Andy Pandy, but the scarf fitted Missy Hissy just as well, and she was feeling better already. was a beautiful spring morning, and Andy Pandy had decided to plant some flowers to make his garden look even prettier than it already was. Teddy and Tiffo were playing a game. The game could have been Chase the Teddy or Catch the Dog. Neither of them was quite sure. But when they saw Andy Pandy, they stopped playing. Teddy asked Andy what he was doing. Andy told them that he was planting flowers. Teddy wanted to help. Andy Pandy said he could. But if he was going to help, said Andy Pandy, he'd need a trowel to dig holes for the flowers to go into. So he went inside to fetch one. Teddy went to smell Andy Pandy's new flowers, and as he did, he saw something that he didn't like at all. When Andy Pandy heard all the fuss, he came out of his house very quickly indeed and asked Teddy what was the matter. Teddy pointed down to the flower bed. Teddy had seen a beetle, a rather small beetle. A small and not really very frightening beetle. But it had frightened Teddy all right, with its creepy little legs and wiggly little feelers and its big buggy eyes. Missy Hissy thought Teddy was being very silly indeed. Fancy being frightened of a teeny-weeny beetle. Missy Hissy laughed as she carried on her way. Andy Pandy asked Teddy if he still wanted to do some gardening. Teddy said he didn't know that bones were used for planting flowers. Andy laughed at his mistake. He'd brought the bone for Tiffo. No, you use trowels for gardening. But Teddy said that the beetle had rather put him off gardening. Andy Pandy said they'd do something else instead. He said they were going to do something else with beetles. Not real beetles, said Andy Pandy. They were going to make beetle masks. In his special cupboard, Andy Pandy found some card, some poster paints, some brushes, a pair of scissors, and some red ribbon. Next, Andy Pandy folded one of the pieces of card in half and painted a big blob, some swooshes, and swirls. Then, as Teddy watched with great interest, Andy Pandy folded the card in half again. When he opened the card out, Teddy was amazed. It looked like a very colourful beetle's head. Teddy watched as Andy Pandy cut out the mask. Then he made holes so that he could see through the mask, and 2 more holes for the ribbon. He threaded the ribbon through them. Teddy wasn't scared of this beetle. Now Teddy wanted to make his own beetle mask, and with Andy Pandy's help, he did. Now Teddy looked like a beetle too. They crept and they crawled, they scuttled and scampered, 2 of the biggest beetles you've ever seen. Then Teddy had an idea. He was still a bit cross with Missy Hissy for laughing at him earlier, so he thought he'd play a trick on her. Teddy knocked on Missy Hissy's pipes. What a shock she had when she saw the giant beetle. Teddy took off his mask and called to Missy Hissy. She asked Teddy if he'd seen it. A giant beetle, a great big beetle with huge feelers and great big buggy eyes. Like this? Asked Teddy. Teddy told her that it was nothing to be afraid of, just a beetle mask, he said, that Andy Pandy had helped him to make. Teddy hadn't noticed that Andy Pandy had crept up on him. Then Andy Pandy and Teddy played beetles until it was time for tea.
Andy Pandy. Here comes Andy Pandy and Lou-Be-Lou. Happy as he can be, Teddy too. Play
One morning, Teddy's house was full of very strange sounds. Andy Pandy wanted to know what was making them. Teddy was making the strange sounds. There was no honey in his cupboard, and he'd had no breakfast. His tummy was so empty, it was rumbling. But Andy had a jar of honey at home, so he'd make honey sandwiches for Teddy's breakfast. Teddy could hardly wait for Andy to open his special cupboard. But when Andy opened the cupboard, they both had a great surprise. They'd never met such a noisy ball. Andy thought it was very funny to see the ball chase Teddy round the room, but Teddy didn't think it was at all funny. The ball wanted Andy to play with it, so he did. Andy and Teddy didn't notice that the ball had rolled out of the house. Where could the noisy ball have gone? Andy and Teddy ran out to the garden. Andy and Teddy were soon having a great game with the noisy ball. Tiffo thought the game sounded fun, and he tried to join in. Tiffo tried to kick the ball like Andy and Teddy, but he'd got far too many legs. The noisy ball had made a terrible mess in Looby Loo's house. Looby was very cross with it. Andy promised Looby that he and Teddy would help her tidy up. Looby was pleased, but Teddy wasn't very good at tidying up. It took a long time to put everything right in Looby Loo's house, but as soon as they'd finished, Andy and Teddy couldn't wait to play with the noisy ball again. Andy and Teddy thought the ball was trying to hide, and they wanted to play a trick on it. Andy hadn't kicked the noisy ball, he'd kicked Orby, who'd just been having a rest in the fresh air. Andy was very sorry and tried to make him feel better. The noisy ball was waiting for them. Andy told Orby all about their new friend, and Orby wanted to join in their games. He tried to make friends, but the noisy ball didn't seem pleased to meet another ball. At first, Andy and Teddy thought the noisy ball was playing, but then it bumped Orby very hard and started to chase him all around the playground. Bilbo and Missy Hissy had heard all the noise. They soon saw that the noisy ball wasn't very friendly after all. Teddy thought it was time the ball went away. The naughty ball went up, up, and away. Orby was pleased that the noisy ball had gone. Andy Pandy said that there was really only one ball they wanted as a friend, and that was Orby. Now there was another strange noise. It was Teddy's tummy again. In all the excitement, he'd forgotten how hungry he was. But it wasn't long before Andy had made lots of honey sandwiches. They soon made everyone very happy.
Andy Pandy. Here comes Andy Pandy and Looby Loo. Happy as he can be, Teddy too. Playing in the garden every day, making things is so much fun. Here comes Andy Pandy. In Andy Pandy
Loo was showing Teddy how to make daisy chains. Teddy was collecting lots of daisies for Loo. She made a little hole in the stem and threaded the next one through. Teddy asked if he could have a go. Loo said that Teddy must be very careful. Daisy chains were easily broken. Teddy wasn't quite as good as Loo at making daisy chains. His paws were too big to make the hole in the stem. Loo told Teddy to be careful. Tiffo thought Teddy was playing a game. He wanted to join in. Loo and Teddy were very surprised. For a moment they just watched in amazement as Tiffo pulled the daisy chain to pieces. Then Loo told Tiffo to stop. So he did. But the daisy chain wasn't a daisy chain anymore. It was a bit of a mess. Loo said it was all Teddy's fault. Tiffo said he was very sorry. He was only playing. Pandy was busy in his garden when Teddy passed by. He waved to his little friend, but Teddy didn't wave back. He was feeling too sorry for himself. Teddy told him about the daisy chain and how Loo wasn't very pleased with him. Pandy told Teddy not to worry. He would show Teddy how to make something just as good as a daisy chain, and a bit more colourful too. And when they made it, said Andy, Teddy could take it to Loo. Perhaps she'd forgive him then. Teddy watched as Pandy went to his special cupboard. Pandy found some glue, a paintbrush, a pair of scissors, a pair of thin knitting needles, and some magazines. Pandy told Teddy to find some colourful pictures in the magazines and tear them out. Steady, Teddy. Next, Pandy began to cut the pictures up. He cut a long, thin oblong. Then he cut a triangle out of the oblong. Teddy didn't see how these shapes were going to make anything like a daisy chain. Pandy asked Teddy to paint the shapes with glue. Teddy enjoyed that. Next, Pandy asked Teddy to roll the shapes round the knitting needle. Soon Teddy had made a little round paper bead. Pandy told Teddy to put it to one side and leave it to dry. Teddy rolled the next piece of paper round the needle. Soon they had made quite a lot of paper beads. Pandy said they'd have to leave them to dry now, so they went off to play. As Andy and Teddy played football, Loo passed by. Pandy asked her if she'd like to play too, but Loo was still cross with Teddy. When Pandy and Teddy got back, the beads were dry. The next thing they had to do was to thread them. Andy found some red string and told Teddy he could put the beads on it. Steady, Teddy. Teddy started to thread the beads again. This time he was a lot more careful. Soon Teddy had made a lovely, colourful paper bead necklace. They thought that Loo would be very pleased indeed with the necklace. They soon arrived at Loo's house. Loo was very pleased to see Pandy. But she wasn't so pleased to see Teddy. She still hadn't forgiven him for what he'd done to her daisy chain. Teddy said he was really, really sorry, but he hoped that the bead necklace he and Pandy had made would help make it up to her. Loo loved the necklace, and so Teddy was quite forgiven. Andy Pandy wanted to draw a picture of his favourite chair. He looked in his special cupboard to see what colour of ink he could find. Andy had never seen this strange bottle before. The strange bottle was full of bright blue ink, just the right colour for Andy's drawing. Bilbo had come to ask Andy for help. He wanted to invite all of his friends for a picnic to celebrate the day he'd first set sail on his travels. But he didn't have any ink to write the invitations. Andy said he had lots of ink and would be happy to give some to Bilbo. Next door, Teddy had so many jars of honey, he was going to keep them all in a box. He wanted to draw a picture of a bee on his box to remind him that inside there was honey. Teddy had a pen, but he had no ink. What should he do now? Bilbo had written out his invitations with Andy's ink. Now it was time to deliver them to his friends. First to Orby, then to Missy Hissy. Tifo was very excited and wanted to help. He ran to Looby-Loo's house and left the invitation on the floor. Andy was so pleased with his drawing that he wanted to show it to Looby-Loo right away. Teddy had come to borrow some ink. Andy said he could borrow as much as he liked. Looby-Loo couldn't wait to see Andy's drawing. But there was nothing on Andy's paper. What could have happened to his drawing? Bilbo gave Tifo an invitation to give to Teddy. Teddy was so pleased with his drawing, he wanted to show it to Andy Pandy right away. He had never seen this card before, and he wondered why there was nothing on it. When Andy Pandy got home, he found another card with nothing on it. Teddy wanted Andy to come with him right away. Bilbo was waiting for his friends. He'd been waiting all afternoon, but nobody had come to his picnic. Teddy wanted to surprise Andy with his drawing. There was no drawing. Bilbo wanted to know why Looby-Loo hadn't come to his picnic, and she told him she hadn't found an invitation, just a card with nothing on it. This was the very card on which Bilbo had written her invitation, but all of Bilbo's writing had vanished. Just as Andy Pandy's drawing had vanished. Bilbo guessed what had happened. Bilbo said that the ink in Andy's strange bottle must be invisible ink. That's why Andy's drawing and the invitations Bilbo had written with the invisible ink had faded away. Andy wanted to know if the writing would ever come back. Bilbo thought it might come back if they heated it. Yes, the writing on Bilbo's invitation was coming back. So everyone was invited to the picnic after all. And now the sun had warmed his ink. They could all see Andy Pandy's drawing. And they could see Teddy's bee. And very good it was too.
Andy Pandy. Here comes Andy Pandy and Looby-Loo. Happy as he can be, Teddy
One sunny morning, Tiffo and Teddy had been playing Chase the Stick. But Teddy had thrown it rather too hard, and it was stuck in the branches of the tree. It was just too high for them to reach. Bilbo was going for a morning voyage in his boat. He suggested that they find another stick. Tiffo said that wasn't a good idea. The stick in the tree was his very favourite stick, and he wanted it back. Playing with another stick just would not be the same. Missy Hissy arrived. She wondered what all the fuss was about. When Teddy told her that Tiffo's favourite stick was stuck, she said she'd try to unstick it. But Missy Hissy couldn't climb the tree. The bark on the tree trunk was a little bit scratchy and very tickly. Teddy said that it looked as if their game of Chase the Stick would have to wait until the wind blew the stick out of the tree. When Missy Hissy stopped giggling, she wondered where everyone had gone. Andy Pandy was repainting Looby-Loo's house when a rather glum Teddy came by. Andy Pandy thought Teddy looked a bit down in the dumps, which he was. Teddy told Andy Pandy all about losing Tiffo's favourite stick in the tree and about how no one could reach it. Andy Pandy said that as he'd just about finished painting Looby-Loo's house, he'd see what he could do to help. And, said Andy Pandy, the paint pots were just the thing they needed. Teddy wondered how paint pots were going to help to get the stick back. Andy Pandy was going to need more things to help Teddy, so he looked in his special cupboard. When Andy Pandy came out again, he brought with him some paint and paintbrushes, some gold and silver stickers, some rope, and a bradawl. The bradawl looked a bit like a tiny screwdriver. Andy Pandy told Teddy it wasn't a screwdriver, it was a tool for making holes in the paint pots. Andy Pandy said he'd better make the holes. The bradawl might slip and Teddy could hurt himself. So Teddy watched as Andy Pandy made 2 holes in each paint pot high up on the sides. Now, said Andy Pandy, it was time to decorate the paint pots. Steady, Teddy. Teddy got almost as much paint on himself as he did on the paint pots, but he didn't mind. He was enjoying himself. Soon both the paint pots were looking very bright and cheerful. Then, when they were dry, Andy Pandy and Teddy made them look even more cheerful by sticking the gold and silver stickers on them. Stickers were sticky, all right. But at last they stuck the stickers where they were supposed to stick. Teddy thought the paint pots looked very smart indeed, but then he remembered why they were making them. How were they going to help get Tiffo's stick out of the tree? Andy Pandy told Teddy that he was going to have to wait and see. Andy Pandy put the ends of the rope through the holes in the paint pot, then tied the ends together. Then he put the lid on. Teddy had been watching, and he did the same with the other pot. Andy Pandy said they were ready. Ready for what? Wondered Teddy. Andy showed him. They had made some stilts. Teddy could hardly wait for his turn. Oh, steady, Teddy. Now to get Tiffo's stick. The stilts made Teddy just tall enough to reach Tiffo's stick. Wouldn't Tiffo be pleased when Teddy took his stick back? Tiffo was playing with another stick when Teddy arrived. He was quite surprised when he nearly bumped into the paint pots. Teddy told Tiffo about how he got his favourite stick back from the tree. Tiffo thanked Teddy, but said that he got a new favourite stick. Perhaps Teddy would like to play with them again tomorrow. All that bother for nothing, thought Teddy. But Andy Pandy said it had not been for nothing. Teddy had a brand new pair of stilts.
So much fun. Here comes Andy Pandy in Andy Pandy Land.
Andy Pandy was busy laying out knives and forks. Looby Loo was going to bring one of her tasty pies for supper. Andy needed some plates. Inside the cupboard, he'd seen another Andy Pandy. The other Andy Pandy was copying everything Andy did. Andy wondered how the other Andy had got inside his cupboard. So he went outside to find the place where the other Andy Pandy had climbed through the wall into the back of the cupboard. Looby Loo had finished baking her tasty pie and was taking it to Andy's house. At first, Looby thought she'd seen another Looby Loo in Andy's cupboard, but when she looked again, she knew she was seeing herself in a mirror. She could see herself dance. Andy hadn't found how the other Andy Pandy had got into his cupboard. But now he saw a Looby Loo in the cupboard. Looby told Andy that there weren't any Andys or Loobies in the cupboard. There was a mirror. It was the biggest mirror Andy had ever seen. He thought that their friends might like to look at themselves in it. So Andy and Looby took the mirror outside. Before they told their friends about the mirror, Andy thought they should try a piece of Looby's tasty pie. Teddy was out for an evening stroll. He thought he'd seen another bear. Teddy was worried that the other bear might take all his honey while he wasn't looking, so he tried to frighten it away. But the other bear frightened Teddy away. Missy Hissy was out for an early evening slither. She wanted to know why Teddy was hiding. When he told her about the other bear, she went to fetch help. Andy Pandy was surprised to hear about the other bear, but Looby thought Teddy must have seen himself in Andy's mirror. So off they went to help him. Teddy didn't believe he'd seen himself in a mirror and wouldn't come out from behind the tree. Andy said they should ask Bilbo what to do. He'd be sure to know. And of course he did. He let Andy and Looby borrow the small mirror he'd always taken on his travels and told them to show Teddy how anyone can see themselves in a mirror. Teddy thought he'd seen yet another bear. Now he thought there were 3 bears, until Looby showed him how mirrors work. At last, Teddy understood. There weren't any other bears after all. And Teddy wanted to look at himself in the big mirror. Teddy thought that he was the finest-looking bear he'd ever seen. And when Andy Pandy said he could keep the mirror in his own house, Teddy was thrilled. Andy and Looby had asked Teddy to share the tasty pie with them. But he was far too busy admiring himself